This Todd-versation is brought to you in part by Produce Careers with promotional consideration from Calavo Growers and Volcano Produce.
Hey everybody, happy 2023. Welcome to 2023. Say goodbye to 2022. It's gone. I hope Santa Claus didn't punk you. I hope Santa Claus was epic. I hope he brought what you needed, what you wanted. Hope your family's well, your time together was well. Father New Year. I think it's Father New Year. I think that's what they call it. I don't stay up to midnight, so I don't even know if that's right. But anyways, I hope you had a great New Year. You didn't stay up too late. My neighborhood, by the way, Jeff, is like living in Fallujah on New Year's Eve. It's unbelievable. There's shit that blows up that I don't even know where it comes from. But nonetheless, that's another story. I'm thrilled to have my guest with me today. I've known this gentleman for quite a long time. He is a big, big brain out there in the retail world, and he's going to expand upon that and share with you. I thought, what a great way to start off 2023. Let's talk about retail. Let's talk about what's going on out there in the world. Give you some perspective from somebody that's been around for a while, has done some really big things, and continues to do some big things. And I think you're going to be in for a really, really great treat today. And I think you're going to walk away going, holy shit, there's a lot we need to be thinking about. So anyways, please give it up for the principal of Martin Consulting, my friend, Jeff Martin. Welcome, my brother.
Great to be here. Great to see you, Todd. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome to 2023. It's going to be another wild and crazy year in the retail world. I'll tell you that.
You think? Come on. It's so funny you say that. We're going to get into all this stuff. But, when I was thinking about what we're going to do kicking off 2023, it's like, do we do the fighter pod? We do some of these different guests, blah, blah, blah. I thought this is the topic that people need to understand and need to hear about and get some perspective, especially somebody that has a track record like yourself that has literally built and built and built retail, moved to the other side of the equation too, and built a brand as part of that process. So you have such a unique perspective. And I can't wait to dive in. And literally, I have 9,411 questions. So we're going to get a plate full of information out to people. Before we get going, if you wouldn't mind, just give everybody a little bit quickly of your journey and bio and who you are and how I roped your ass into being here. And then, folks, stand by, because Jeff and I are going to tell you a story that is going to freak you out.
Well, it's been a great bunch of years, Todd. I started in the supermarket business after growing up on a dairy farm. In 1978, I started as a part-time produce clerk, and I kind of thought I was going to be like an engineer or something. And what I wound up doing, I wound up staying in the supermarket business, and I had a wonderful 35-year journey with Ahold USA. And when I retired from Ahold in 2012, I was the EVP of Sales and Merchandising for a U.S. business. I got a chance to spend 4.5 years with Utz Quality Foods in Hanover, Pennsylvania, with the folks down there building that brand. And it was really an interesting opportunity to get on the other side of the desk. And from then, I've been doing my consulting work and helping brands and retailers build businesses. So it's been a wonderful journey.
Oh, there's no two ways about it. And you and I have crossed paths for a lot of years. We're going to talk about that a little bit before we get rolling into the deep dive and when I want to learn about retail and what's going on. But, Edwards, Giant, Ahold, unbelievable retailers. And before I go any farther, we got to throw out Tony Schiano's name. We got to throw out Jeff Boyer's name, both Sue's names, because the wives were super important in this conversation. There's no two ways about it. But what you all did to embrace the organic produce movement was unlike any other retailer at the time. I mean, you were the first retailer to run TV commercials about organic produce. You changed your merchandising to put organic produce into the mainstream in grocery stores. Which, by the way, I have a giant store over my shoulder here.
I see that.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't take that picture. I'm not going to say I stole that picture off the web. When I say mainstream, you guys literally embraced the concept of dropping conventional items and replacing them with organic items, which was unheard of. It was uncharted waters. It was quite an exercise for both of us, for both Callow and for Giant to get through and sit down and talk through, figure out how we were going to make this work for both sides, which was, I think, one of the things that I'm probably the most proud of is those conversations of like, okay, how do we both win the day here together? And I think that changed my mind a lot about what retail was and how you could go to retail and how to do it better. So with that being said, before we get into the story, which I promise everybody's coming, because this story with Jeff and the helicopters is crazy, but we're going to get there. Talk to me, if you wouldn't mind, just for the audience, to give them a little bit of perspective on what that is. Talk a little bit about, why you guys chose to do that and what that impact was to your business, especially at that time, because it was cutting edge.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were dabbling in the natural and organic space, and across the store, and organic produce was leading the way. And quite frankly, we knew that retailers like Whole Foods and others that had been in the organic business were gaining market share against us, and we needed to figure out how to continue to grow and expand, our organic presence. And, I think what we learned really early in the journey was that having really good organic partners matter. That's how we got hooked up with you and Callow. And I would tell you that also what we learned about in that journey is that predictability gives those folks that are farming the confidence to be able to line up behind a retailer. So if you live strictly on a bid and buy business and you're all over the place and you're not really living a true partnership with somebody, they can't have the confidence to go and do things for you that allow you to make decisions in your business, such as replacing, organic items or conventional items with organic. And just one that pops in my mind right off the top of my head was scallions. We eliminated conventional scallions and went only with organic product. And the way that we did that is really we negotiated with you guys our volume, and we got a price that we felt we could live with. It certainly may not have been as cheap as conventional produce, but it was reasonable enough that we could offer our customers the confidence of what we believe to be better tasting and more nutritious food for them in the organic space. And that wound up proliferating itself across the department. And there was other places where it just made sense for us to drive that volume into organic, get the pricing down because we could deliver that volume, and work with our partners to get there. And I will tell you that our customers responded because we gave them choices, right? We merchandised the department so that they could see conventional and organic stuff where we did carry both, what the pricing difference was, and we made the communication about that product clear enough that people understood they had a choice. And I think customers really appreciated the fact we didn't push them one way or another.
No, it was brilliant. I mean, it was again, I put it up there and all the things that I've done as one of the biggest and best exercises on how to change the food dynamic in this country. And to your point, it was a very thoughtful process. It was always about togetherness. It was always about how does everybody win. And honestly, it really changed my trajectory about how I thought about going to market to business, how I took myself to other people, how I presented myself in those conversations, and always felt like when you got down to being friends and communicating at a high level and communicating openly and honestly, this is bad for me, and here's why, this is bad for you, how come? And you got to that end game, it was a slam dunk. I mean, it was just amazing. It was great business. I mean, it just was so much fun. So much fun.
It was great. And it's great to have good partners like that care about what you're going to deliver ultimately to your customer. And quite frankly, that level of quality, that understanding, that deep partnership delivers what I thought was a differentiated experience for our customers, and it helped build our produce business.
There's no two ways about it. So let's get to this. Let's get to this story, because I'll frame this up a little bit, and you can take it from there. So one of the things we used to do back in the day at Cal Organic is that because we had a lot of acres and our acreage was expanding, we were big believers in beneficial insect. It was a big part of our program. But when you have 40 acres, 60 acres, it's hard to walk through a field and spread insects out. So what we ended up using back then is that we have our helicopter company, who had a company that would do helicopter work. We put one of our bug guys up there, and we put beneficial insects in little brown paper bags with a little bit of, I think it was wheat germ. I think it was wheat germ was what they used in there anyways. And they would go open the door of the helicopter, and they would shake these bags out. And because of the way that the blade of the helicopter works, it rotates the air down to the ground. So it's this beautiful coverage of beneficial insects. So when the helicopter comes to the farm, there was a place that landed all the time. And we had behind our packing shed, we had 2 reservoirs that were separated by a roadway, probably, I don't know, 10 yards wide, maybe 15 yards wide, something like that, wide enough for a pickup truck, not a big deal. But the helicopter would land right there because of the fact the water was in there. So he's, of course, not creating any dust, not being bad. So I had the brilliant idea when you all came out to visit, and I had everybody in the office. I had your spouses with me. I had them So we decided, hey, this would be great. We'll put 3 of you up at a time in the helicopter, give you a tour. Fascinating to be able to go up there and release insects and see the farm from the air. What a great idea. I mean, really one of my top brilliant one and done ideas I've ever had. So the first 3 go up, come back great. I'm driving the van. We go out and watch you guys. I've got all the wives in the van. We're chit-chatting. And I pull back into Cal Organic, to pick you guys up to go to see what's next. And I'll let you tell the rest of the story from here.
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor. At Produce Careers, we are in the people business. Thanks for listening to Todd-versations. As your trusted executive search firm for the fresh produce, food processing, and agribusiness industries, we focus on outcomes. With over 80 years of combined industry expertise, with our global networks, we have the tools and the skills to identify top talent for your organization's strategic hiring needs. Our relationship-driven approach and proven recruitment process deliver the right candidates at the right time. At Produce Careers, we know each hire is an investment. Whether you're looking for the perfect candidate or searching for your next challenge, call or email us today and let us partner with you.
It was wonderful because the guy that was flying the helicopter was pretty proud. If you remember, that was a brand new helicopter he had just purchased, and
royal blue with a big orange stripe.
It was gorgeous. I mean, he was really excited about it. So up we went, out the window, we dumped the insects, we come back in, and he lands the helicopter, perpendicular to the roadway on the, between the 2 retention ponds there. And he says, jump out. So there was 4 of us in there, and out we go. And when we get out, we hear him yelling. And I look back, and he is standing on the front of the front rail of the bottom of the helicopter, jumping on it, trying to push it down. And here the helicopter tail is leaning toward the pond. The next thing you know, the tail rotor hits the pond. The tail of the helicopter explodes. And it literally sounds like you were in a Vietnam War movie. A shrapnel was whizzing by your head. I never ran so fast from one place in my life thinking, if I just make it to the other side of the shed and don't die, this will be a great experience. But that poor cat, he didn't have insurance on that chopper. And when he shut her down, he was just sitting over there on the edge of the pond with his head in his hands. I felt so bad for him. But what an experience I'll never forget. That was the wildest thing I ever went through in my life.
So to take the story full circle, I pull in with the van with the other folks in it and the missus, right? And we pull up. We have no idea. We drive up to the reservoir to pick you guys up. And here's this helicopter with its ass sticking into the water, off the rails, up. He's sitting by the helicopter, and you guys are nowhere to be found. And we pulled up and stopped. And every single one of you are all together walking out of the bathroom. It's like, what the F just happened? And hear this whole story. Classic. Unbelievable. Classic. I can't believe it. That was the last one. That's the last time we gave a ride. That was over at that point. That was a quick one and done.
Yeah, well, it was quite the experience. I'll tell you that. And in all facets, by the way.
There's no 2 ways about it. But then we proceeded to go to dinner that night. I think everybody felt a little better after that.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
All right, brother. Let's get into this. You opened up as we started our adventure here today talking about this. Going to be a crazy 2023. So let's get into it and fire off a few questions. Start talking about this business a little bit. And first one I want to throw at you, which is 35,000 footer, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. What are some of the biggest challenges you think that are ahead for the grocery business?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple biggies out there. One is this inflationary environment that we're in. I mean, with food prices almost up 11%, you got retailers now that are, have had to figure out how to price themselves in the marketplace, react to increasing costs, and try to bring a value equation to consumers. So that inflationary trajectory is a tough one to kind of navigate your way through. The downside of that, and I think it's probably going to happen in 2023, is the deflationary side. The inflationary side of retail is always a reasonably good journey for retailers, because you inventory in the system that keeps going up in cost. You raise prices, that lower cost inventory that you have, you're selling for more. You're generally improving your margin as you go. The problem happens on the other side when you're coming on the deflationary side. And, smart retailers in deflationary times that have a little bit of a kitty and can make decisions, a lot of times they'll come out with pricing actions. They'll try to go back out and let the consumer know that they're reacting in their best interest. And you'll see people run lower prices campaigns and, really change the trajectory. So I think understanding that pricing dynamic for a lot of retailers is going to be challenging. I mean, many of the people that are working in pricing departments today weren't around to see some of these major inflationary changes of the past. So that's going to be a really, really big challenge for retailers. I think the labor market's going to continue to be a challenge. So I think, figuring out how to run the right size supermarket with the right offerings and be able to put the right amount of people in it to deliver a right level of service, it's also going to be a huge challenge for retailers as well. And I think, you're hearing a lot about it now. And I think store profitability is going to be a big thing to talk about in 2023. I think a lot of folks are dealing with huge levels of theft and shrink caused by either lack of training or lack of personnel. And I think you're going to see retailers make harder decisions too about, and across all spectrums, grocery, drug, you name it, about where do I keep stores open and where do I close stores. And
you're seeing that now here in California. I mean, you look up in the Bay Area, their CVS is pulled out. A lot of people are pulling out because that exact point you just made. They're just being robbed every day.
Yeah, you can't take millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of shrink and keep stores open to try to serve the public. And it makes really, really, really tough decisions for retailers to be able to serve neighborhoods that they can't operate profitably in. So, I think those are, some of the biggest challenges that we'll probably face, in this coming year. But as fast as the inflationary side pops you up, the downside of that is even more challenging, and figuring out, how to keep yourself competitive. And that's going to be, it's going to work these pricing departments and merchandising departments pretty hard.
I would think it would, but I often talk about that there's a hidden cost in making food cheap, and I think that there's a difference between cheap food, cheap retail, et cetera. And I think that there's going to come a time and a point. I think this may be this reflection point that retailers look at. It's like, how much cheaper should we go? Can we go? Do we need to go? Is zero the final number at the end? Like, we did it, we got it for nothing, and we're giving it to you for nothing, because that doesn't win the day, right? So when I say that, I guess I'll throw this question at you, throw that statement and throw this question. What are some of the opportunities you think are out there? Whether it be for the retailer, or even for the customer at that point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this has always been about understanding how the consumer perceives value, right? So really and truly, it's not all about price. I mean, in all the years and all the surveys we did, while price ranked in the top 10, it was never number one. I mean, product quality and freshness and cleanliness and other things took priority before you got into price. And I think understanding how to deliver value to consumers is going to be as important as delivering just price. I mean, there's going to be folks out there that focus on price, and if you want just price, there'll be options for you to shop. So discounters and, short-coded stores, so on and so forth. But I think for the traditional supermarket, I mean, I think a couple of things is they have to find the value equation. I think the other thing for supermarkets today is to understand who they are and what they are, right? So don't try to be your neighbor. Don't try to be the competitor across the street. Be the best you that you can be, and make sure that everybody in the organization understands what that mission is. Because the moment you try to act like a club store, a discounter, a conventional retailer, a natural and organic player, you get too spread out, you start to lose your identity. So you have to be really, really clear about what you are. And And I think if the mushy middle, as I call it, supermarkets today, can figure out how to really deliver that value equation to consumers, and that's price, promotion,
Right.
that's people, that's all the P's that we go into when we look at how to merchandise a store.
Well, you said it beautifully. I mean, you can't be all things to all people at retail. It's a death sentence,
It is.
right? You've got to stick to your lane. And I think even more so now, the consumers want, I think consumers expect the retailer to do the heavy lifting for them. And I believe consumers walk into the grocery store for the most part with what I call intentions. They have some intention to do, whether intention to buy a paper towel, but if they're buying food products, they have an intention to do something. If they're a natural organic customer, they have an intention to do something good for themselves, their family, their health, the planet, whatever it might be. And I think that if you are so spread out amongst trying to be all things to all people, you lose that opportunity to take advantage of that when that consumer walks in, that touch point that, I say it all the time, going to buy paper towels is not an emotional or values driven decision, right? But picking up fruit is, buying meat is, deciding what pasta. I mean, there's connective tissue there. And I think it's important that we elevate that intention game for the consumer. And I think that's not a hard lift for the retailers to do, but I think it's a valuable one. I think will probably be, to your point, what you're saying, in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, traditional supermarket design, and a lot of retailers that have a lot of stores probably have facilities that they need to go back and invest in, put money in to
Sure.
make sure that they're delivering that equation to the consumer. And it's hard because you don't just change a store around for a couple of $1 million, and you can't hit them all. So you have to really think about, how can I get the best possible program out for customers across the broadest space, and product and placement, and exactly the experience the customer gets in the offer, which is the store that they're in, really, really makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's get into talking a little bit more about the size of retail at this point, what grocery may look like in the future. Because look, Kroger's doing their thing with Albertsons. Who knows where that's going to go? Amazon, I heard Amazon's not growing. Shocker. Amazon's not getting any smaller. They're going to continue to be a dominant force. So what do you think the future is going to look like, and how big these folks can actually become?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, when you think about that. Now, everybody's trying to compete with Amazon and Walmart, right? They're the biggest players in the marketplace. If you listen to, certain parts of the grocery business, there's a lot of talk around, are we really being fair and equitable out there? Are the smaller retailers really getting treated fairly by CPG companies out there? And I think the biggest worry is that you'll pull so far to one side or the other that you got, Amazon, Walmart, and the Kroger Albertsons deal being so dominant that nobody will pay attention to everybody else. And it's been a world where a good and fair and balanced approach to even the mom and pop stores matters. And over the course of time, big companies have been able to gain efficiencies, but both in distribution and the way that we move product in around the supply chain, that there is advantages to the size and scale. But I think you see the pressure now coming on in the government. The FTC is really spending a lot of time talking about just how big should these companies become, and how big and impactful are they to the local marketplace. And I think you're going to see more people diving into those conversations, and these things being tougher than they may have ever had been in the past. So I think, I think it's going to be incumbent. Again, there's going to be that group of big players. I think there'll continue to be local and smaller players that I think are going to continue to do very well, because they've been able to really support their local neighborhood, their local farmers. They're really ingrained in the communities. It's everybody else in that middle that has to figure out how they're going to operate and what they're going to look like, in the future, because they're transactional in nature. And like you said, there's no emotion to buying toilet paper. You can buy it online from Amazon and get shipped to your house. But walking in and picking up a fresh, ripe, organic tomato that you're going to take home tonight and put on your salad because it smells, looks, and going to taste the way you want it, is really what's going to differentiate a lot of retailers. So, I think you're going to see continued pressures around supermarket companies getting too big.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, you brought up a really good point that as these guys scale up and you look at some of these retailers too, based upon the amount of volume that they're putting out, I'm not even going to call it any names, but you take any of them that are out there, their margin doesn't have to be the same as a mom and pop. And so if you're buying widgets and you're buying 50 million of them versus 500 over here, there is that disparity to exist. And I think that much power starts to become concerning. So, I mean, in ways that providing food and accessibility to food, I'm all down. No argument for me about that. I want to, you should be able to walk to a grocery store or whatever the case may be, right? We don't want to, I think that's an important narrative. But you do have this all of a sudden mom and pop threatening, and there's these issues with these small retailers. And I don't think that's healthy for competition. Plus, there's a hell of a lot of good retailers, to your point earlier, that are out there doing some amazing things, that are in their lane, that are just not trying to be all things to all people, but they're making these incredible experiences. So that power does become, I think, pretty concerning at some point. It's going to be interesting to see because, you got, like I said, retailers surviving on 16, 13, 14% margin because they can. That's a tough game for everybody to live in. Great for the consumer, but not for the long-term game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, and when you're trying to compete on price and, it's a race to the bottom and eventually not one that you're going to win. So you need to find the right balance there between size and scale, and make sure that we're living in a good, fair, an open marketplace that gives everybody the same opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I really do. And I think it's just important. But I also think it's important that people recognize and take a moment of pause going, what is my local supermarket? Do I, do I go to that meat market? And how much do I actually participate in that meat market? And start to think about your local communities and what's going on. I mean, we had a store here that's no longer standing, that was around for almost 100 years in the community. That was just this great. Started with the family, and they just couldn't get out of 2008. Really, really well. They struggled, and it was unfortunate. But you miss that feel to that store. That was a whole different experience than you get at your other store. I want to drill down a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. I got a couple topics specifically about retail and how it relates I'd like to talk about. And the first one, you touched on it earlier, and I was waiting because I want to get a little deeper in the weeds on it. But let's talk about retail today as it relates to employees/labor and what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the retailers aren't immune to the same problem that they're having everywhere, right? Department stores, fast food restaurants. It's a tight labor market. We're going to see that eventually slow here. I mean, I think that the tech side is taking the hit right now, doing some significant layoffs. I think you're going to continue to see other businesses rationalize some of their workforces that they may have got a little fat on, during COVID, and that is going to help the marketplace a bit. But nonetheless, it's going to become harder and harder to find people that want to work in a supermarket. I mean, working in a supermarket it's not an easy job. You're hustling, you're lifting, you're doing stuff that requires you to be working. And I think a lot of folks today maybe, don't thrive in that environment. So retailers have to figure out where to place their bets with the folks that they can get, with the labor that they can get. And then, of course, it's not a situation anymore where you're paying $7 or $8 an hour for people. I mean, many of these areas now are requiring $15 or $20 an hour minimum wages, which makes it even more difficult when you think about the average hourly rate that a retailer in the supermarket business, who's probably operating on a 4% bottom line EBITDA or lower, has to figure out how to live in that world. So if you double somebody's salary, on the part-time ranks, it pretty quickly starts to make you realize that we got to think about that, that equation a little bit differently. So I think people are going to have to start making bets about where do I want to provide service and people, and where don't I, and how does that fit into my supermarket experience?
Yeah. Well, I look, we've seen it. I've seen it in retailers where they've just eliminated like the fish department. It's like just gone, just buy it frozen. Here you go. It's the best we can give you. And I think labor is going to be an amazing part of it. And I think that, and we hear it, you go to this minimum wage. Look, I want everybody to have a good life. I want everybody to be able to, pay their bills and to have, put food on their table. That's not a question here. But it becomes this what's next because of this effect, right? It's if that's going to be the fee, then everybody's going to have to pony up. It's going to be a change in the process at retail, the whole 9 yards, because it's, just because you pay somebody $15 an hour, that's not exactly what they get paid. It's a lot more than that goes through the system. It's a lot more than that goes through the system.
Yeah, and of course, and as you know, it's like anything else. When the cost of gas goes up and the cost of labor goes up, retailers don't go, oh, gee, we'll just make less. That cost gets passed on to consumers, 100%. And consumers ultimately pay more. So it's just something that we have to think about, in an effort to try to make sure we continue to bring value to the customer.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about e-commerce. That certainly is a big buzzword that's taken on a ton of momentum in the last however many years. But I think it's going to become, the pandemic obviously made it into even a bigger conversation. I think that e-commerce to me is really interesting. To your point, buying paper towels online is one thing. I struggle with, please have somebody go pick my tomatoes and my peaches for me and then have them come to my house. I guess I'm too old school. I can't get my head wrapped around that. But talk a little bit about what you think e-commerce is going to be like for these folks going forward.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to hold its place in the shopping experience. And depending on where you're at, maybe it's 10 or 15% of your business. But it's an important 10 or 15%, right? I mean, if you're trying to grow at 2% a year in volume, you need to make sure that e-commerce offering is exactly what the customer wants. So, I think the good thing about grocery retailers is they responded pretty quickly to this, right? They learned pretty quickly about how to do delivery, pickup, how to do shop in store. I mean, they gave the customer a pretty big offering all the way around. I think what's going to happen is now everybody's got to pay that bill, right? So, you did what everybody else was doing from a price to shop perspective, but eventually you got to make sure that those things are maintaining their profitability. But I think the next evolution of this in e-commerce is going to be that, at least if I was thinking about it today, would be smaller square footage stores and still have an enormous amount of variety available for consumers that could be shipped directly to their house. I don't have to carry every flavor of maple syrup in my syrup aisle, but if you want that one special brand of syrup, to make it very easy for you in your shopping experience to order it, maybe even right as you're shopping in the store. And then, just like Amazon, in 2 days is at your front door. So there's not a long delay, but we make sure we kind of give you that endless aisle, if you will, that opportunity to get everything that you really, really want. Because like you said, a lot of that is not an emotional deal, but it takes up a lot of square footage in a store. That square footage costs a lot to heat, to build, to take care of. So, I think stores are going to get smaller, and I think e-commerce is going to continue to play a role in helping retailers rationalize that space.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I see people shopping now when I go to one of the big national chains here in my community. And it's interesting is that, they're getting the vast majority of their groceries online, but they've got to go to the store to pick up. Most people do the curbside type deal, but then they're running in to buy their produce and select. I mean, it's really interesting. It's like, I saw this and all of a sudden here they have this basket of all this other stuff that was already done for them. Their shopping experience was like, Tim, I was like, oh, that's kind of an inventive way of doing it. Keep your hands on what you want, but yeah, I want, Del Monte relish. Not a lot of choice needs to go in which bottle you pick up off the shelf.
100%, 100%. Yeah. So the center store gets smaller. You offer extended variety by that endless aisle concept, and you kill it around the perimeter with fresh and put your help and your effort into the areas that matter there and give the customer a really great experience,
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit too about something that is, I think in the last few years has certainly come to the surface a little bit more, and that's culture, right? And it goes back to kind of employees and this and that. I guess I got to throw it behind that, but whatever. But nonetheless, let's talk a little bit about culture and what that might mean today and what that's got to be feeling like for the retailers, because retail stores are different.
They are. And I tell you, having a culture in retail, in my mind, that respects people that work for you, all differentiated type of people that work for you, that your stores reflect the neighborhoods, that you live and work in, I think is critically important. And then I think, treating people well, fair, and understanding their needs and wants are really, really important. All of us grew up in the business and we worked really, really hard, and people said, oh, gee, there's that Todd guy and he's doing a really, really good job. Let's make Todd a manager. So all of a sudden we make Todd a manager, and Todd's got 10 people working for him now, but he's never been taught one lesson about managing people.
Right.
So, your experiences are limited as to what you're going to do and how you're going to handle yourself in front of those people. And I think, creating a culture in a store is left up a lot of times to the management team, and depending on the ability of that team to deliver that experience to their store associates is, it's risky. It's risky. It can go one way or another. But I think businesses have to push that down from the top. The tone at the top sets the tone at the store, and I think you got to live the mission. And I think we got to realize that people, they react differently today. They work differently today. Technology plays a different role than it did in 1978, than it's going to, play in 2023. And we just have to make sure that we're mindful of how to create the culture that people want to be involved in and want to work in.
Yeah. And it's a challenge, right? And it's a challenge, especially with the different generation of kids coming up and what they're tolerant of and what their expectations are. I was working on something and it was looking at the fact that culture, beliefs of a company are some of the strongest things that actually get people to go to them these days, more so than it ever was before. More is about a job and the money. And now they're drilling down to what does the company believe in? What are you doing with your money? Where's it going? Well, I don't align with that. I'm not interested in you. It's a different world today. And I think culture is going to play a big role.
No doubt. And businesses need to decide, what to support and where to put their bets, and how to make sure that the things that they do to help the environment or to support, local, or all the other things that matter, that they do those in a balanced way. So you don't alienate your consumer base one way or another, but you try to participate with everyone the best that you possibly can. And I think that's the hardest thing to do, is to find that right swim lane to put yourself in culturally. So totally agree 100% that it's a big deal today, almost more than it has ever been.
Yeah, I would think so. What about technology? I mean, we did e-commerce, which is not the same thing, but technology in the retail sector, I mean, between robots, putting stuff on shelves, taking inventory. I mean, everything's going to this, let's be really fair. Let's say what it is, right? We are working diligently to replace labor in this country, right. Whether it's ag, whether it's on the farm, whether it's in the, whether you're, inside of a manufacturing facility. Retail is no different. Can you touch a little bit about what you think technology is going to start to look like, or what might be happening?
Yeah, no, I think, listen, we're getting really, really smart in the business now about, how to plan effectively at retail. I mean, artificial intelligence plays a role in ordering. Outside influences like weather can be predicted now, and computer ordering capabilities. And, they've taken out a lot of that intuitiveness that we used to have. Not all of it. It still requires management to get involved. Sure. But the ordering technology, the theft technology, the ability to track shrink and overproduction and underproduction across the board is bigger and better than it ever was. I mean, look at the front end of a store. Who would believe that you would go into a supermarket and there would be 3 manned checkouts with cashiers, 5 to 10 self-service lanes, and then a bank of 10 self-service pods where the customer checks out themselves, 60% of the time. Yeah. I mean, when's the last time you went through a conventional supermarket lane? The retailers have now got you trained to check yourself out. Mm-hmm. So I think technology is going to continue to evolve to help us think through the most challenging issues that were always those that came with experience. How do I plan to order the right Halloween candy this year? How do I make sure I have enough hams for Christmas? These are things now that technology has helped managers learn more, and supply chains react better to that flow of information. Because if it's transparent in the system and everyone can see it, then everybody knows how to properly react to what the necessities are going to be at store level.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, it's because it's not going to slow down, because again, all we see is what's out in front of it. We're not thinking about the guy in some garage in Oklahoma City who's come up with this idea that's going to change the world. We haven't seen that yet, right?
No, that's absolutely right. And I mean, listen, you can go into a store today. Who would have thought this? You wouldn't take your smartphone, scan the entire, your entire order on your smartphone, check out, and walk out of the store. And it's just really, things have changed so much in just a few years that it's hard to imagine what the next 5 or 10 years in retail might look like from a technology perspective.
100% agree with that. And what's interesting too is, like, what are we going to look like too as a country when all of a sudden, and that's, maybe we don't have 500,000 grocery jobs anymore that just vanished. Maybe it's more jobs now. I don't even know. But we need to be thinking along those lines. Technology for all is good. We don't think about, well, what is the net result of that on the backside? And that's going to be a challenge that's going to be very interesting to get through. I think.
100%.
I want to come back around to the economy just really quick, because one of the things I find really, really interesting that I have seen is that the conversation around the economy I think is somewhat dialed down, right? Whatever the media is throwing out there, it's not, they're not using the same words as people that go, well, the financial experts go, no, this is what this should be called, right? And I get all that. I get the posturing, how this game's played. But it's certainly concerning when we're not having honest conversations about our money and what's going on and understanding the economy, because this is a great time to bring a lot of people in this country alongside what's happening, right? It is what it is. It's a byproduct of a lot of things. But it's also in some ways a great educational experience to say, hey, be mindful. Let's think about how we go through the future and what we want to do. So I don't want to go through a whole bunch of questions, but I think when I think about it from that perspective, a couple of things I want to throw at you is, like, what kind of encouragement, if any, are you taking out of what you're seeing or what you're hearing? And, what's the end game to some degree and agree, or, maybe better yet, what's the new normal might look like? It's a big, broad question I threw at you, but I want to get a little deeper into it.
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor. At Produce Careers, we are in the people business. Thanks for listening to Todd-versations. As your trusted executive search firm for the fresh produce, food processing, and agribusiness industries, we focus on outcomes. With over 80 years of combined industry expertise, with our global networks, we have the tools and the skills to identify top talent for your organization's strategic hiring needs. Our relationship-driven approach and proven recruitment process deliver the right candidates at the right time. At Produce Careers, we know each hire is an investment. Whether you're looking for the perfect candidate or searching for your next challenge, call or email us today and let us partner with you.
Well, I tell you, I think, listen, we're going to have another 6 to 9 months of a tough economy here. And eventually, we're going to see things settle down. Energy prices will come down, component costs will come down. And, that as that has a ramp up effect in inflation, it'll have a ramp down effect in deflation. But what typically happens in these cycles, and, if they're 2 or 2.5 years long, this will be a great time of innovation in our industry, because people will solve these problems and find opportunity that will change the game going forward. They will find ways to increase value or bring product to the marketplace in a better fashion. And all that designed not only to make the supply chain better, but to hopefully offer the consumer something in return. And I think those things, once that this economic wave we're on settles down, I think you'll see us get back to a reasonable inflation, probably somewhere in the 2% range. Everything that I read said it's going to happen sometime in the late part of 2023. And I think by then you're going to see a lot of new innovation, a lot of new ways of thinking being brought to the marketplace as a result of living through this, what probably will be a soft but somewhat of a recession that we're going to go through.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I definitely don't. I 2023 would be great if we can get something done by the end of the year. I don't know. I think we'll see how much we keep spending what we don't have. Let's see what that does for us too.
That we got to shut off.
That's a
we know
problem.
that's a problem. We know we gotta keep that under control. And if we don't do that, this is going to go on for a longer period of time. But outside influences, like the Russia-Ukraine thing and other places, those things hopefully will settle down, and that'll just bring the supply and demand balance back into the new normal. I mean, I heard the other day, last year at this time, there was, I think, 109 ships sitting off the California coast trying to get into Long Beach, and there's none out there now. They're flowing through because other ports took on more, inbound shipping. Other changes happened. The price of a container out of China went from 20,000 to 2,000. All those things will flow back in, to bring the price of goods down. So, I think all that stuff will have an effect on the normalization that'll come out of this. But make no bones about it. Every time we go through one of these, prices go up and stay up in a lot of places, and they don't rarely come back down to the good old days.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing prices go back down to the good old days. I've been around the block a few times, and it's like, no, once they get there, they're there.
Yeah, right? That's right.
That is right. Kind of the new normal. Well, I want to talk a little bit because we're on this subject of money a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about investment that's out there, especially in the agricultural space today. There's over $50 billion we're throwing at different ideas and, around the globe. India is leading the charge now with the amount of money they have raised and being put to work in agriculture technology. It's fascinating. I mean, it is a lot of money that's being thrown at stuff. And it's fascinating to watch. What piques your interest when it comes to, I'll say agriculture technology, but I'll just do a broader brushstroke and say technology in general. What excites you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the whole idea around the fact, listen, I'm a farm boy, grew up on a tractor, dumping seed in the back of a corn planter, and running out in the fields and doing what we do, all the time. But today, that literally can be done automatically. A GPS device takes a manless tractor and goes out and plants a field more precisely than any one of us could have done when we were out doing it, and gets the maximum amount that they can out of the acreage that they're planting. They know where every seed went, what seed it was, what the weather conditions are, what their anticipated yield is. That technology, Todd, for me in the agriculture industry, and how we're going to be able to, this is a place again where there's not a lot of people running to work farms. What scares me the most about our country is I think we need to do more for the farmer. I think we need to protect our farmland. And I think we need to make sure that we're putting as much time and treasure into protecting the U.S. agriculture business as we possibly can. And that includes new technology and new abilities that allow these farming families to make a living. Because, I mean, a lot of them, it's either feast or famine in this business. One year's a great crop, the next year isn't. You get caught in markets. It's a tough business. And, getting people today to want to continue that legacy is harder and harder. And we need to make that business easier, smarter, and better for them so that we can make sure the acreage we have is productive. The American farmer deserves our attention and our time and our technology treasures.
100% agree with that. 1,000% agree with that. 1,000,000% agree with that. I don't even know. I don't know what you do after that. I think 100% is usually as high as we always go, but I'll throw 1,000,000 out there. But you're absolutely right. Because one of the things I'm really going to be focusing on talking about in 2023, or at least trying to highlight in conversations, is really getting a clear understanding of what food insecurity and what food security means. Because a country that is food insecure is also terribly insecure all the way around its borders, right? It's a real problem. And we see that in this country. We have people that are food scarce. And there should be no reason for that in a lot of ways. I think it comes down to what you're saying is that we've got to start uplifting the American farmer. We have to invest in the American farmer. We have to stop living a life that it should be at the grocery store because I walk in. We've got to think deeper about our food experience than that. And I think it's going to be incredibly important that we do and keep these conversations elevated. To your point, technology is going to make a lot of improvements, whether it's, putting food closer to people, whatever it might be. But as a nation, I think we've got to embrace this conversation and understand, why aren't farmers going back? Why are we losing the next generation? Where's the topsoil going to be in 40 years? You take a look, there was just a report that came out that talked about the 10 or 9, whatever it was, number of places around the globe with all these agriculture issues. You've lost 8 inches of what they call black gold in the middle of our country right now that's not coming back, which is the topsoil. I mean, there's some real problems out there that we need to address. Because I'll tell you what, folks, you go out and look at that kitchen cupboard right now and open it up and say, how many days of food do I have in there? And imagine if you have, if it's 4, imagine what happens on the 5th day.
That's right.
It's a worthy conversation to start planting, I think, that seed in our heads a little bit.
I totally agree with you. Well, it's a passion of mine to make sure that every time I get a chance to talk about it, I do. But we need to spend a lot of time on the American farmer as we continue to grow and evolve as a country.
100%. And it takes me down this trail with my next thought I want to throw at you. One of the big things I talk about all the time is food is medicine. I think it's incredibly impactful when we start to think about the benefits that food can have in our life. And, schools is a big area of interest for us here on the broadcast. We're doing a lot of work right now trying to highlight the schools that are scratch cooking, putting better food in front of the kids, result, better test grades, better attendance, all kinds of things that are happening. More people eating in the cafeteria, more kids eating in the cafeteria because the food's better. I mean, really some super positive stuff. But one of the things I dove into, and I was thinking about our time together, and it is the interest of healthcare costs and what it means, because it's a big burden on retailers. It's a big part of what we do. In 2020, the healthcare cost this nation $4.1 trillion compared to $27 billion in 1960. In the USA today, healthcare costs $12,530 per person, which is staggering per person. There's 330 plus million of us. Yeah. And it was $353 back in 1970. So if you computed $1970 to today, that'd be about $1,875 equivalent. So we're spending, think about that, over almost $13,000 a year per individual for healthcare. So big, broad, up top cloud question I'm going to throw at you. How can we drive changes through, our country, through the health narrative and stuff? And what can retailers do to help that? I think that's a lift that they have to shoulder some responsibility on, looking at, should we stop? Should there be laws that say we can't market junk food to kids? I don't know. Maybe start there, right? Maybe that's an interesting one to throw out, whatever it is. So I'm going to throw, that's a big, broad question. I don't even know what the fuck I asked you, but I think I asked a question.
Well, listen, I think we've been trying to think about this in the retail business for a long time, and it's hard, right? People want to make their own choices, and they're going to. But as a retail industry, we've brought in more transparency around food. We try to bring more communication to customers around what is good and what isn't considered good for you. We've brought dietitians into the stores to try to help people make better choices. Yeah. All of those things are important. And I think, it all starts with education, right? If you're young and you're influenced on how to eat well and eat right, and good and healthful food is available for you, and you learn in that process what you should and shouldn't eat, and what is a treat to have a little of, and what are the things to consume more of. You talk about food as medicine. Eat right, and you're going to live a long and prosperous life, because you're going to get the right type of nutrition from the food that you eat. But somebody has to teach you how to that happens, what happens there. So, I'd love to see retailers partnering with local schools to really continue to help educate folks at a very young age. I'd love to see them bring them into the supermarket and take them through the store and tell them how to shop and teach them how to really, learn how to live in the supermarket environment, so that they grow up with those better habits. And I think, if I was still, in the merchandising area, running the store today, I would really, really try to partner with my local schools to get these kids as early as I possibly can into the right habits as it relates to eating, both in school and out.
You're 100%. You're preaching the choir here, brother. It's really something we really believe in strongly here at TLC and Todd-versations and what we're doing. I mean, we've got our series we've launched called Lunchtime Heroes. We're highlighting these actual school, these folks at the schools that are, the directors of culinary, et cetera, that are out there making a difference. And the results with these kids, it's unbelievable. And I think it's so important to bring up. We talk about healthcare, right? How do we cut that cost? Well, to your point, let's work with the kids. I say this all the time. It's like, you and I, we had our shot to fix the world, right? We haven't got there. And I don't think we're going to get there in the twilight, right? I mean,
right.
But we have the wisdom. And I think we have maybe regret and maybe we have optimism, whatever you want to call it, to go back and, to your point, get into the schools and start putting better food in front of these kids and start putting better food in their bellies and watch what it does to them as individuals. Watch their grades, watch their attendance, watch their performance. There's countless stories, these kids going back to some of these experiences where they're saying, hey, Mom, would you go get this for us? Could you make this for us? And I literally just tell a story with a gal. She's like, I didn't know where to go get something my daughter wanted. And she had to call the school and say, where do I buy this? Because she wanted to make it for her. But that's what's going to win the day. And that's what offsets a lot of the problems that we have. And to the point you made earlier, it certainly does up the retail experience for consumers. It becomes that emotional, that morals and values play when they go shopping because they want to walk in with good intentions.
100%. Yep. And if you can find a way to create that connection between kids and families in your supermarket and eating better and feeling better, those costs you talk about are going to go down. People are going to live longer. They're going to be in better shape. And these kids are going to take that lesson and they're going to change generations, after us about 100%. How to eat and how to live right.
Not 100 million%. I'm going to that one now. I agree with you. I love it. So give me, as we sit here and we're crystal balling here and we're looking at what's going on in the world. Give me your one piece of advice you want to give for 2023. What would it be? Besides, bet on the number 4 horse in the 7th race. Besides,
exactly. That's always fun, by the way. But, my one piece of advice for this year is I hope that, as a nation and as a world, we can continue to find ways to get closer to each other, work together, find ways to improve society and spend less time doing things that aren't helpful for mankind as a whole. And I think that if we spend time focused on each other and making sure that we treat others the way that we wish to be treated, we're tolerant of other viewpoints, and that we really, really take into consideration that those lessons that we might teach or those seeds that we might plant will hopefully grow for generations to come. So my 2023 advice is for each of us to do our part to find a way to build a bridge to our neighbors and to make the world a better place to live.
100% with that, brother. Look, I mean, you know what? It's not about being right or wrong. It's about getting along.
That's right.
And if you don't take the time to listen to what somebody has to say, maybe they change what you think, maybe they reinforce what you think. But you know what? We were little kids. We wanted to be listened to by our parents. We wanted to be talked to. We wanted to be hugged. We wanted to color. We want to do all those things. We're no different as we get older. We just become more crotchety, more rigid, and have a bigger line in the sand. And it, quite frankly, is not working.
That's right.
It's just not working. So let me ask this: when you see comment, I'm going to dive into this a little bit, but I'm going to throw another one at you. Well, as you see it, what are some of the common characteristics that get people where they want to go in life?
It's pretty simple. My grandfather said to me when I really first started managing people, he said to me, Jeff, he says, always walk a mile in that person's shoes. And he said, always put yourself on the other side of the desk, on the other side of that conversation. And always remember, treat people like people, because that's all they really want to be, is just treated like people. And I think if all of us would just interact with each other and realize that it's really about how we treat each other, even when we're having difficult conversations, when things haven't went exactly right, you can do that with respect and you can do that with purpose and hopefully in a way that the person on the other side will appreciate it and maybe even change that behavior. So, I think it is really, number one, walk a mile in that person's shoes.
Yeah.
Know that we're evolving and changing as a society, and make sure that your viewpoints are being educated and informed by those changes. I think making sure that we know what has kept our country strong, and the things that make the United States what the United States are is important. So let's make sure that, we're reinforcing the behaviors that are right for our democracy and doing the right thing for our fellow man.
I love it. I gotta love it. I mean, I'm dropping the Sharpie on that, kids. And we're gonna call it quit. We're calling it quits on that one. I got nothing behind it. What's next for you? What's going on for us? What about Martin Consulting? What are you guys just gonna keep helping people kick in doors and change the world for the better?
That's right. I'm going to continue to help, young and evolving brands hopefully find a way into the supermarket, help them with package design and product. Continue to help retailers as they might reach out and talk to me about things that they might need some insight for. The one benefit of getting a little gray in the beard and the hair is that, you've seen a few things in your days, and a lot of times I can bring that to bear in conversations that help folks. So for me at this stage of the game, it's about having fun and working with people that I can take my experiences and hopefully help them be successful.
I love it. I agree with that wholeheartedly too. And the gray hair thing, I kind of thought it was more than that, but I like the way you said it. So I'm going to buy into that and go, screw what I think.
Yeah, exactly.
This was awesome. Thank you, brother, for being here. Your words of wisdom, I think, are going to open up a lot of eyes, make people think a little bit, especially folks that aren't retailers, but would deal with retailers, to get a clearer understanding of what that world really looks like. Because it's interesting because, you may sit down with some VP or whatever it is at a retailer, and you're going to get whatever the response is he's supposed to get you, as opposed to the responses that we went through today, which are from such a great perspective of being able to say, well, let's look at it, from that whole circular view, as opposed to just that cheat sheet they're reading off of. So I think it's going to be really informative for people to listen. I'm glad people are going to get to be a part of this.
That's great. Well, thanks for having me. It was wonderful to not only chat with you on the program, but have an opportunity to talk to probably some folks out there that I haven't talked to for a while. So I really appreciate you affording me the time, and it's wonderful to kick off 2023 with you.
You're show number 1 of 2023, show number 138, baby. You're the man. You got to love it. You're open.
Love it.
Like, and if we go downhill from here, totally your fault.
I'll take the blame.
Thanks, everybody, for listening and hanging out with us. We appreciate you. Welcome to 2023. We hope this is a great way of starting off the year. Gives you perspective. No matter what side you are on this food fence, you're going to learn something from this. It's going to make you stand back and think, and maybe it's going to make you ask some questions to the people you work with and get better clarity in what's going on. Like I say all the time, this show is a source of inspiration. I hope this conversation was for you too. Make 2023 important. Make 2023 a day that every day in 2023, you tell somebody hello that you haven't said something to, you wave to your neighbor, you talk to your mailman, do something to inspire somebody, just like what Jeff's saying. Let's be better to each other. That is how we're going to win the day. And that's how we're going to come together and make this planet survive for the long game. Believe me, I'm convinced of it. So thanks for listening. Check us out on social media, TLC_Todd-versations. We're there. You know why we're there. I'll tell you one more time why we're there, because the Kardashians are, and that is only reason I'm on social media, so I can follow them, because it's so important. Anyways, I appreciate you all for being here. Take care, and we'll see you soon. See ya.